Hey y'all, Austin here with Outer World Media. Welcome back to another book review, guys. July is over and August has started, so that officially means, guys, that it is Halloween season. I got my Halloween coffee cups out, I got my Halloween shirts out. So, what better time to talk about this book than the start of Halloween season? Yes, Halloween season in my household starts the first day of August. So I wanted to get this review out as quickly as I could, but without any more, interruption in that. Let's get into it, guys. We are talking about Stephen Graham Jones. I Was a Teenage Slasher. So, kind of getting into this. So, if you don't know who Stephen Graham Jones is, Stephen Graham Jones was born in Midland, Texas, roughly about 2.5 hours away from where I'm located at. He's born in Midland, grew up in Stanton, which is just outside of Midland, kind of like a suburb of Midland, if you will. It's between Midland and Big Spring. It's right there in the middle between them. He's been writing books for quite a long time. I believe since the 2000s, early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. I think 2000s when his first book came out. But, he slowly, it's more and more has gotten into writing just more plain horror books from what I could tell. So when I saw that, he was writing a new book, I was super excited to hear about it. I had read My Heart is a Chainsaw. I had read Don't Fear the Reaper. I haven't read the third book in his last in that trilogy yet. But when I heard that he was writing a new, what appeared to be a horror book, what I assumed was, since it's called I Was a Teenage Slasher, I got super excited. I was waiting for details to come out, and then when the details came out, I got super, super excited, guys. And the reason that is because this takes place predominantly in Lamesa, Texas. Lamesa, Texas is just south of where I'm located, here in Lubbock, Texas. I worked in the oil field down in the Midland, Odessa area for a little while and whatnot, so I'm very familiar with that area, also living here in Lubbock, Texas. I was super excited about that and whatnot, and so, that got me really pumped for this book before I even started it, before I even knew what it was about. And then the reviews started coming out saying that it was a different take on a slasher genre, a slasher story, and this and that. And I was very, very interested. The more I heard, the more interested I was. So it didn't take me very long to read this book. I'm not going to lie to you guys. But getting into, what is this book about? This book is about Tully Driver and Amber Dennison, I believe. Yes, Dennison. Like I said, this book takes place in Lamesa, Texas in the 80s. So the height of the slasher era. If you are a horror fan, I'm talking about. If not, the 80s, were huge for just slasher films, horror movies of all kinds. I mean, you had Elm Street come out in the 80s. I mean, you had, just so many different ones. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Just so many different, horror movies came out in the 80s. We got more Michael Myers. We got, I believe, in the 80s, Hellraiser came out in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, we got a lot of, horror movies out in that time. And I know someone's probably going to, correct me down in the comments about that Hellraiser, but I'm pretty sure it did. But so, finding out that this is, takes place in the 80s in Lamesa, like I said, there's circles around those two characters, mostly around Tully. Amber is more of a horror aficionado out of the two, if you will. They're teenagers in Lamesa, Texas. If you don't know anything about Lamesa, Texas, there's nothing to do in Lamesa, Texas. There is not a damn thing to do in Lamesa, Texas. You either go up to Lubbock, come up here to hang out, whatnot, or you go, down to Midland, Odessa area. And so again, this story circles around them and focuses on them. Again, they're teenagers in the prime of their teenage years and whatnot. They're kind of outcasts. They don't get along. The story opens up. They are on their way to a party of some sorts. And at this party, we are introduced to a couple more of quite a few of the teenagers. Actually, I say a couple more. It's actually quite a few of the different teenagers from Lamesa and whatnot. And the story picks up from there. We are introduced to the tropes of a horror movie, if you will. But the great thing about this story in this book is that Stephen Graham Jones takes those and flips it on its head, because it ends up, totally becomes, and I don't think I'm giving anything away here, totally ends up becoming a slasher of sorts. And so we follow him, and as this book goes on, we just discover more and more of how the story unfolds. And as the story goes on, we realize that this is totally looking back, on the events that led up to why he became a teenage slasher. As far as, I know a lot of people are going to wonder, as far as I'm going to put this right here just so I can have, something for y'all to look at. As far as, why he's doing what he does, he does give you the reason why and whatnot, and he does a very good job of telling you. And another thing I know a lot of people are going to ask about is the kills. Because you can't have a slasher story and not have kills in it. Well, you'd be right. The kills in this book, they're very thought out, and I enjoyed them. I think that's a very grotesque thing to say about reading something about someone killing another person, but just the way it comes about. And then the final act, we're led up, and I will say, a lot of this book is not, slice and dice like you would expect. We grow to like the characters of Tully and Amber. I really grew to really like them and their dynamic and whatnot, Believe it or not, Tully is allergic to peanuts. We get to find out just kind of weird little, things about them and whatnot, We find out that Tully's father had died in a horrific car accident and whatnot. We find out that these teenagers don't have anything to do in Lamesa, Texas, so they do just about anything and everything to entertain themselves. And I think Mr. Jones does a great job making you feel sorry for the situations that these kids are in. Not just them, but the other kids in this town. Again, if you get the chance to go to Lamesa, Texas, expect nothing there, because there's hardly anything. And I know there's going to be somebody from Lamesa watching this and are going to get offended by me saying that, but it's true. And again, kind of circling back around to Amber and Tully, again, I grew to love these characters more and more. I really, when I started the book, I wanted to get to the slice and dice, the killings and whatnot. And as the book went on, I started to realize, I don't, if I get that, then, that's just a cherry on top. I want to know more about these. I want to see them interact more and more with each other. Again, give me 1 second here. Again, you really grow to love these characters. And when the story wraps up, without giving anything away in this story, without trying to at least, I really, the ending, I remember, and I will probably always remember reading the ending. I had to go back and reread it to make sure that I read it correctly. I'm not a sentimental person. I don't cry. I'm not like that. But it struck a chord reading the ending of this book. I didn't cry or anything like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm not one of those people. But again, just, the way the story ended, I don't want to use this term lightly, but it was poetic in a way, just the way it was not only written, but the way it ended. It definitely struck a chord. And once I read that, I wanted to go back and reread the story. Just because, again, you go into this book with the title of I Was a Teenage Slasher, expecting, a Friday the 13th Part 4, just nothing but endless carnage, candy. And that's not what you get in this. You get a little bit of that again. But we're here. By the time you are a third or a quarter of the way through this book, you are locked and loaded. You are here for Amber and Tully. You don't care about, the killings and whatnot. You are focused on them and, the dynamic between them and the dynamic that, the town of Lamesa has on them and the surrounding areas, There's a lot of different areas in, that are mentioned in this book. You get Lake Allen Henry, Lubbock, Midland, Amarillo, Canyon, Odessa. Just so many different places are mentioned in this area, and I think that made me enjoy it even more, living out in this area. But again, guys, I was a teenage slasher. If you go in expecting it to be nothing but, an 80s cheese fest, you're gonna get killings like you would see in an 80s horror movie. But the story is there, and the story is just awesome. It really is. This was such a great book. I really enjoyed reading this. He has another book coming out next year, and I can't wait. I can easily see myself rereading this book quite a few times between now and then, just for how much I enjoyed it. If you are a horror fan, this is definitely a book for you. His other series, while it mentions, you know, I couldn't tell you how many horror movies, this one is subtle. It kind of explains the cliches that come in a horror movie. So if you're not really that big into, horror movies, and you're not as big a fan as, say, someone like me, who, if you can't tell, I love horror movies. This is going to be right up your alley, because he sets things up perfectly and he tells you the cliches. But even if you are a huge horror fan like me, he takes those cliches and he flips them on its head. It's such a great book. I cannot highly recommend this book enough. This was such a great read. I really, really recommend go out, get this book. I feel like this book should be talked about way more than what it was. Before this book was, officially published, I wanted to do an interview on the channel with Mr. Jones, and his publicist said that, he was busy, which I understand. I completely understand. But now more than ever, I really want to interview him on the channel and just talk to him about this book. I can't say enough. I absolutely love this book so much, guys. Again, go on Amazon. For whatever reason, my local Barnes & Nobles doesn't have it. I know my local Walmart doesn't have it. Like, I don't understand how this guy is not bigger than what he is. Dustin Neely over at the Dustin Neely channel, I know he's had his ups and downs, mostly down here lately with Stephen King. I think Dustin would enjoy reading this. I think everybody would enjoy reading this. Again, this is such a great book. Again, if you're not here for the Carnage Candy, there is a story here. I promise. Just the story alone is worth it. But the Carnage Candy is there, and it's just the icing and the cherry on top of how amazing this book is. So again, guys, I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I can't highly recommend this book enough. Go out, pick it up immediately. Stop what you're doing, pause the video, whatever, go on Amazon, go wherever you can get your local, books at, and get this book. Again, you will not be sorry. As always, guys, I do appreciate y'all stopping by and checking out my review. Leave a like down below, hit the subscribe button. That definitely makes doing these videos a lot better, seeing y'all enjoy these. Comment down below if you've read this book. If you haven't, again, go pick it up, come back, let me know what you thought. Again, guys, thank you.